there's a lot of things to think about with ADHD, and I've tried to keep it simple, because having the autism, I've got to go into minute detail. But to be honest, we don't always need to know every single detail. So I've tried to present this in a way that things you need to know, keep it simple, and then based on your own personal circumstances, you can pull out from that what you need. And by all means, anytime after this, give me a shout and clarify anything or answer any questions. Don't worry about that. Now, ADHD is defined by either inattention, disorganization, or hyperactivity and impulsivity. It's not linked to intelligence. Super intelligent have ADHD and vice versa, and the other end of the intelligence spectrum. In fact, on the bell curve of the population of intelligence, most people are in the middle. The bulk of people are in the middle, average intelligence, and that's where people with ADHD and autism, sit on that bell curve. It's a multi-layered condition, and each layer has its own spectrum, and it affects everybody. There's a core theme, but it affects everyone differently. So, for example, I'm not too bad with certain things, but my working memory is quite poor. So I rely heavily on notes, but then in ADHD, notes are a bad thing, but it's the only way I get through. Otherwise, I'll not be able to sort that. The difference between male and female, broadly, it's the same. It's not a male condition. They used to think it was naughty boy because of the hyperactivity, but we now understand it a lot better, and it's not just naughty schoolboys. It's there's the inattentive element as well, and there's a lot more to it than that. And broadly speaking, it affects males and females roughly the same, but I think more anecdotally, I'm still trying to find the evidence for it, but the evidence, or the anecdotally, I've heard highly qualified academics talk about this, but I need to see the research a bit before I can validate it. I think with females, you're more likely to be inattentive than hyperactive, and I think that's why they used to think it was boys, because boys run around a lot more, whereas girls don't do so as much. The percentage of the population that have the condition, whether undiagnosed or diagnosed, is roughly about 3-4%, which is about 2.5 million people. There's a lot of successful people. There's a lot of barristers with the condition. There's obviously Branson, which is quite famous. There's dyslexia as well, and some other successful people. I think Lee Mack, he's got ADHD as well, so he can write successfully. He's got difficulties, but he's successful and sociable. There is an employment rate disparity, which I'll get into further down the line. And despite that, you can still be successful, be self-employed. Okay. The difficulties can be found in 4 main areas. And that's to do with working memory. There's also activation control, which is the arousal, which you're allowing for focus and attention and things. There's emotional control. And there's also difficulties with problem solving, which we'll get into. Now, working memory, that's where you will hold in mind information. So as I'm talking to you now, those with ADHD might forget bits that I'm saying. They'll have to make spurious notes, or if you're having to make spurious notes, you'll then miss what I'm saying, so that might cause a difficulty. But also it's being able to access stored information. And that's partly because our memory, unlike when you switch the light on, it's just one long continuous electric current. The brain relies upon lots of very tiny bolts of information, and there is the neurotransmitters is a chemical that transmits that to the next part, and that's quite low in people with ADHD, and so that's why we think, I know that, why, I know that bit of information, where is it, why is it, and you can't access it. You know it, but you can't access it, or it takes you a long time to think of things. So accessing stored information is quite problematic and difficult for many people with ADHD. Getting started as part of the activation thing, knowing when to get started. It's these levers are not under self-control. You know you want to do something, but actually pulling that lever is physically impossible to do. Even though you know you want to do it, you just can't. But that some people are under aroused in that regard, but some people are over aroused in the activation area. So they'll not only cut their own garden, they'll cut the whole street. And whereas some people just going out there and trying to make a start on even just a bit of weeding, it's just impossible. But this is not always a consistent thing. You can be hyper aroused, you can be under aroused, but you're constantly fighting against your own brain. So that's one thing I would say. Don't ever fight against your own brain. For those who have ADHD, if you've got a condition, you know roughly how it affects you. Don't fight against it. If you know you're going to have a difficulty at a certain time, but it's not your time to do that particular project, move on, do something else, whether it be work-related or a hobby or just chilling out, and do something else and come back to it, and you'll find you'll do a much better job because you're not fighting your own brain. The activation element too controls whether you're listening. So you'll find it's picked up mainly a lot of children. They'll be sat in class and it looks just like they're not listening, and they're not, because there's something else. They're looking outside, or they're looking at something on a board in the classroom, or whatever it is. And so also waiting their turn, knowing when to wait your turn is difficult. When you've got ADHD, it's nearly impossible. And knowing, even when you know you're a grown-up, you think, yeah, I'm not going to wait my turn, but then it becomes stressful because you know you're going to struggle. There's lots of elements to it. It's not just a single thing. Now, emotional control is difficult. And people think, and then same with the autism, people think, oh, he's having a paddy, get over it, he's all right. It's much, much more deeper than that. That lever of self-control, it's not that we don't want to be stressed and upset and aggrieved. Nice people, but when we're in a particular situation, we get very stressed and hyper, and we just want to curl up in a ball and push people away, because that gets rid of that stressful situation. So this low tolerance for example, queuing. Now, I was recently purchasing something before this lockdown, before Christmas, and I went to collect it, and there was a bit of a queue, and I just quietly said to the person at the shop, says, look, I'm going to struggle to wait here, because it made it even worse that it was near a car park. So I was queuing in a car park, and it was a long queue, and so I can wait probably 10 minutes or up to 10 people. The 10 minutes is the time period, but next to a car park, that shrinks a bit. And she really didn't understand the condition, and then it gets up onto a stressful situation, and you end up arguing, and you're like, hang on a minute, this is where I wanted to be. I'm actually embarrassed and annoyed at that situation. I make it look really small and like the wrong one. And it's like, no, I'm just explaining, look, I can't keep on the struggle. But somebody else in the store heard this and went, actually, what did you order? Right, there you go. Done. So in the end, it was resolved. But I think you need to be open about your condition for those that have it, and explain and just say, look, because the more people explain and push the doors, the more reasonable adjustments we'll get. Yes, it's in law, but unfortunately, not everyone understands or gets it. But the more we talk about it and say, look, this is a difficulty, I can't control this. Let's deal with it. Problem solving. This comes down to, it might be organising yourself or solving a problem. And that's through various factors. The working memory helps you with hindsight. So how did you learn from that situation before to make this one better? And you take a slightly different path. And with that lack of hindsight, even when you've got good intelligence, you can often become overwhelmed or pick the wrong bit of detail to sort. Another difficulty with problem solving comes down to time management. Now, we understand the clock. We know that's got to be finished by 5 o'clock, but it ain't going to get finished by 5 o'clock. Because for people pleasers, we want that, as we get onto in a bit, our brain works best in a crisis, and we need, if we've just got one task, we're going to get bored of that quite easy. We need lots of things to juggle around. It's like trying to land a lot of planes at once. We need that mental stress to be able to do it really, really well. And so we're aware of time, but we lose track of time, or we don't give realistic deadlines. So, yeah, it might take me half an hour to write something physically, but because of my ADHD, it then takes a day or half a day. But I might not start that for another 2 days. So I need to give a 3-day deadline rather than this afternoon. And then that causes stress and anxiety, because maybe you've got your manager on your back saying, look, Mark, you've not got this in on time. Well, I did it as quick as I could. Everybody has their own 100%. Norwich Union, it's an old example, but I think it's a lovely example. Back in 2002, I think it was, I was working for Norwich Union, and I was underwriting insurance claims for a bank. And I didn't realise at the time, I wasn't diagnosed. I had epilepsy. I diagnosed epilepsy, but I wasn't diagnosed for the ADHD. I just knew I was a bit eccentric. That was about it. ADHD brain, where was that? Yes. Norwich Union. Yes. So I was making copious amounts of notes as to why I'd reached that decision, whether you were increasing or decreasing terms or keeping it the same. But yet my colleagues made much lesser notes. They were doing something like 18 claims. I forget the numbers, but 18 claims a day, cases a day. I was doing 12. So my 100% was 12. Their 100% was 18. So as long as you're achieving your 100%, then what's the problem? There isn't one. Everybody has their own 100%. And looking back, I think it wasn't just the working memory, because what I was thinking was, if somebody asked me tomorrow or next day or two, Mark, how do you justify this decision? I can't remember. Quite simply, I can't remember. I've dealt with lots in that meantime. and I've commuted to and from work. But I think it was because as well the detail was added, even more detail than I needed, because of the autism that I have. Because without that detail, I can't sign off my brain and go, yep, that's done. Now, moving on, going into a little bit more detail about those areas. With ADHD, there's the two types. There's the predominantly inattentive type. There's predominantly the hyperactive type, or combined. But most people have the combined type. But they, as I said, they affect people slightly different in slightly different ways. Staying tuned, which is the focus thing. Your attention drifts. It's like listening to the radio. You can't figure, which you don't know which thing to pay attention to. Which radio station shall I pay attention to? Let alone which channel. But you'll be on a task and you'll be there, right, okay. And if you're at work, somebody comes out the lift, and that'll distract you. So then you get back on task. But it'll take ages to get back on task. And then somebody will drop the pencil over there and you think, oh, hang on, what was I doing? Oh, yeah. And then that goes on all day. So what you need to do really is sit yourself somewhere where you're not going to get those distractions. Willpower and voluntary control we briefly touched on. We can't make ourselves pay attention. Now, I'm repeating some of these because I'm just presenting them in a slightly different way so that if you did miss them, if you've got ADHD, it's just helps repeat and go in. So the willpower and voluntary control is key. I know I want to do something, but my lever cannot be pulled. For example, if I'm really not interested in something, I won't pay attention, even though good manners, good values, yeah, I'll pay attention to that. I will not. It's very, very difficult. We have difficulty getting organised. We're okay sometimes organising our stuff, but it's that getting started again. It's that willpower. Getting started that's really, really difficult. And of course, we have difficulty with sleep. We struggle to get to sleep. Therefore, we will struggle to get up. And obviously, the less sleep you have, that's going to affect your performance. When working on any project or any task, we're much better at sprints rather than a marathon. If we've got a really long task in front of us, that's just going to switch my brain off. I'm not even excited by it. Whereas the same task broken down into lots of mini tasks, because that brain needs a tick to go, yes, I've done that. That dopamine of, yep, I'm moving forward. And so that definitely helps. We work much better in a crisis as well. Briefly touched on that. We leave things to the last minute. If there isn't a crisis, we will create one. Now, I did an ADHD talk for an organisation, and I like to tailor them and whatnot, and the one that it's solely focused on HR. The one I'd already got was fairly generic, but it was with elements of HR in. So I thought, right, okay, let me tailor this and let me, 4 weeks before the project, and I'd already worked with them before, and yeah, I knew what I was doing. Got my cards out in front of me. No, nothing was happening. 3 weeks before, got my cards out, the knowledge in here. Nope, nothing was coming. On the train, on the way down, nope, nothing was happening. I thought, I was delivering it at 2 o'clock that afternoon, And I was on the train at 6:30 that morning from Northumberland down to London. Nope, nothing was coming. And apparently it's one of the best talks I've ever delivered. I was sat in Costa Coffee in Gatwick Airport an hour before the talk. And apparently it was one of the best I've delivered because I only got an hour and I was like, got to get this done. And so everything was coming to me. You've got to be in a crisis. That leads me on to the next point. We do struggle to get things expressed onto paper, our thoughts expressed onto paper. Even when you're great at physically writing, even if you've got with or without dysgraphia, for example, and you've got good intelligence, you know roughly what you want to say, but you've got a blank piece of paper in front of you, it's really not going to come. So what I do is, like I said, rather than fight against my brain, I think, right, now's not the right time for this project, I'll go do something else. But one little reasonable adjustment I have, I recommend to people, and we'll get onto reasonable adjustments in a moment, but one thing I recommend is just having somebody sat at the side of you. Everything's your work, but what they're doing is kind of elbowing you and saying, have you thought about that heading? So the heading really is your question, and you're answering a question, so whatever that might be. Another thing that helps me is acronyms. And if you have an acronym to think about, make up your own, but it could be BREAD, it could be during a law student, when I was a law student, it was IRAC, and it was like, right, okay, what's the issue, what's the rule, how did it apply, and what was the conclusion? Without that, I wouldn't know where to start. I think, all right, issue, yeah, done. Rule, done. I'm halfway there. Because once you've got the issue and the rule, you think, right, okay, well, that's how it applies. And once you've applied it, you can quickly conclude. So that's really, really key. We have sensory issues as well as with ADHD, and they're like computer viruses, very intrusive. I love an egg sandwich, but if somebody's eating one on a train or, some Doritos, a couple of benches down, that enters my head. I'm hypersensitive anyway, but it enters my head. It's all I can concentrate and focus on. And it then becomes a distraction from what I'm trying to do, which makes me then more stressful. And everything throughout the day, anybody with or without a condition can have, if you think of one feather is a stressful thing or annoying thing, okay, and then something else happens, like the train's late, so that's one bit of feather, and then the train's delayed, you've got to get off early, that's another one, and then you get a phone call, meeting's cancelled, but before you know it, you've got all these feathers, and it's very stressful to try and even just cope with those, let alone get on with the rest of your day. Something that many people aren't aware of is something called rejection sensitive dysphoria. And I can see somebody nodding their head, so they've heard of this. Apparently most people with ADHD have this, not everybody, but it links quite nicely to the computer virus, because you'll see somebody that you know very well, and you'll cross each other in the street, but they'll be on the phone really busy and they might not even see you. But on your mind, you think, why has he ignored me? That's really bothered me. And it takes over your day until you deal with it, or a week. It could be a week. And it happened to me a few times, and it was locally, and I thought, why is he ignoring me? And I thought, everyone stops and talks in the village where I live, but why is he ignoring me? What's up? And it just transpired he was having a really bad day, and he genuinely not seen me, and he was really apologetic. The tables had turned. And to be fair, I didn't actually say hello to him, so he didn't say hello to me. So it's just you think that there's a rejection even when there isn't one, and even if there is a small minor rejection, it becomes it's bigger, it's larger than it actually needs to be, or you think it is. There's nothing wrong with the long-term memory. Many people with ADHD have really, really good memories. It's the short-term memory that's key. Of course, there are many strengths within ADHD. We do have high levels of alertness, but it's something that we must be interested in. We can focus on something if we're really, really interested in it. If we're not interested in it, no, not bothered. We do have a general passion and enthusiasm for a lot of things. We're very insightful and we're very good with our creative thinking. Now, we're quite open to making mistakes. And yes, we'll make many getting there, but we will get there. Okay, I'm going to move on to reasonable adjustments, because I touched on essentially what the key things are there within ADHD. Does anything anybody would like to know, either email me afterwards or I'm not sure. There's a few. I'm not sure if someone's asked a question in the chat. Bear with me. All right. No. If anybody's got any questions, by all means, ask me afterwards, or and clarify anything. That's not a problem. Memory, I found, is that working memory is one key factor. And once you get over, you never get over it. It's like wearing glasses, isn't it? You've always got an impaired eyesight. But as soon as you put the glasses on, yep, things are much better. Take the glasses off, you've still got that impaired eyesight. But what I recommend is printing things. Don't rely on a computer screen, because you're constantly flicking back. And actually, people with ADHD find it easier to read something. And actually, you can colour it in as well with highlighters and write on it and put your own key, spin on it. Large computer screens help with that. So, like I say, everything's visible. So you might have a normal size, like a 13-inch laptop screen. Try and get a bigger one or a bigger display screen. And it means you can have more things open, like you do in your ADHD brain in real life, and try and have, those. So like you say, it's like you think, right, okay, I'll be doing my accounts. And I think, right, okay, that was £14.23. Right, okay, I'll add that to, hang on, was that £14.32 or 20? What was it? So I'll be going back. I think, all right, yeah. So then I'll go back, and I'm wasting more time flicking between. And I try not to, for little things like that. I mean, I recommend printing, but for the sake of a number to put into my account.
Maneuver around it. I don't know about anybody else, but I've struggled today. I've had been working on it for an hour.
So, probably.
Accessing the chats, so I know that much. Don't have the answer, that's fine.
Right. I'm just, everyone's in the room, that's great. I just mute. Bear with me.
Yeah.
Right. Can everyone still hear me? Just give us a nod if you can still. Magic. I've just muted a few. I would love to hear everybody, but I know I had technical issues in the past. It's not the same when everyone's quiet and there's just me talking. And an ADHD, I'll just talk. So hopefully everyone's enjoying what I'm saying. But there we are. So yes, clocks are a great thing, but not just a clock that says, yeah, it's now 3:05, it's 2:20, and so on. but, you know, a countdown clock, one with different colours. I mean, psychologically, if you've got a red bit in there, you know, like the colours of the traffic lights, to say, right, green, you've started a task. Amber, you need to tie it up. Red, yes, you need to finish that now. Psychologically, red is quite a negative thing, and it might cause more stress, but there's a crisis, so you might do well. But, you know, you could divide that up. Some things I have, there's different levels of time, but the egg timers, you know, the egg timers, sand timers? So you start it, you can't even forget to press it. You've either got the time is on, or it's not. So once you've turned that up and it's working, you think, right, I've got to start. I've got to, rather than thinking, did I start that? Did I switch that on? There's a lot of apps out there and technology, and they're not a golden nugget. I mean, I've found some that work, some that don't, and it's a personal choice. You know, writing lists are a good thing, but you need to have stuff that's achievable, because if you don't prioritize what you're going to do, it's just a list. And I find that I carry my list from day to day to day to day, and I think, well, no, if I can't remember it, it's not important, or if it's not on a particular list, then it doesn't. And getting rid of, if it's a really difficult task, get rid of the difficult tasks first, get them out the way. With distractibility, I mean, I use, it depends where you sit, either in the office or at school or college or wherever, home. Depends where you sit as to what you'll notice and what you'll see. But you need to, I have headphones, the over-ear headphones, the noise cancelling on, and I can't even hear the tractors go past. They're really, really good, and I have the right music. If I just want a nice relaxing day, I'll put some classical music on. Sometimes I'll put some really, heavy rock music on. It makes me rush through stuff and get it going. So the pace of music can obviously have a thing there. Don't forget to route any calls and emails and things, and don't worry about answering emails and calls straight away. People wait. People will wait. And don't forget, if you send an email, you'll get one back. Then they'll send one, and they'll send. Try not to send emails. Pick up the phone. What's wrong with picking up the phone? And then you'll get a direct answer. And actually, you'll get a quicker answer because you're on the phone, putting pressure on them, saying, when will I receive that? Give me, when can I update my sheet? A key thing is having project books. It's perfect if you're at work, but also if you're studying, you're constantly adding to that anyway. But if you use like a display book, with the plastic pockets, you can spend a couple of pounds on them, or you can spend £30. It depends on what you want to do. But I was working with, I was on the train for, and I was doing a talk for. I was working for, I was coaching somebody, and she was in meetings, and she couldn't remember stuff off the cuff. And then she had to scroll through her emails to plan for a meeting, to find out the updates. And I said, why don't you have a project book? And I said, in that project, have the 6 areas that you need to be in constant contact with. So what is the science department doing? What's the legal department doing? What's your other contacts doing? And in that, just when you get an email through, just have a log to say, well, so anybody, you can take that straight to the meeting and go, right, where are we? And you can go, right, that, and that. Magic, job done. And it massively helped. Not disclosing a condition, I'm going to get into that later as well. What helped with that particular individual was she'd not disclosed the condition up until then either. And disclosing the condition to to whoever you're working with, whether it be you're a student at college, or you might be working in an environment. If you don't disclose that condition, how can I help you? And without disclosing it, you might be worried about that information once it's served, but unless you tell them, they can't help you. And they'll make reasonable adjustments, and you're protected by law for that. Okay, there's hundreds more reasonable adjustments I could go into. I'm hoping I've given you quite a lot of information about ADHD. And so we now need to move on to autism spectrum disorder. And bear with me. Does anybody have any questions about ADHD right now?
Do you take any medication for it?
That's a good question. I'm not clinically qualified to talk about medication. I take methylphenidate, which is Ritalin. It's under a trade name. Just a small dose, and that glues me to the desk. So that gives me for a few hours that bit of focus. There's lots of other different medications out there. Obviously diet, helps and stuff like that. But you need to speak to your GP and a nutritionist about that. I intermittently do.
Yeah, have you heard of the one called Straterius, the blue and yellow one, little minion pill? I think it's called tamoxifen or something.
Yeah, I don't really get into medication because it's not the golden, because they are effectively stimulants, and obviously a lot of people have other conditions. So yeah. I kind of shy away if you bear with me from talking about.
That's all right. No worries. Thank you.
So yeah, there are lots of medications out there, but some are suitable for some for others. Depends on what he wants to do in life and so on. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah, somebody's asked there about masking. Yeah, a lot of people do hide their condition, and depends on what scaffolding they've got around them. And if you've got a good support network, as soon as you go to work, you're not just seen as a bit eccentric, or you might be forgetful, as it were, and it becomes annoying to people. Masking. That's more of an autism thing, but people do try and mask their condition by avoiding certain situations and things. It's a lot more difficult with ADHD because your working memory it's the prefrontal cortex is where ADHD comes from, and that's essentially the file of facts of the brain. And so, memory, organization, planning, and it's kind of a key part of the brain, and without it we kind of don't do it. And if you can, especially when you've got really good intelligence and you've got working memory difficulties like I have, it's really embarrassing and annoying. And like, I don't go down to the pub because it's always talk about certain things that I can never remember. I might have just watched it that morning, a football game or something. I'm not into sport, but I will, just to keep up with the banter, but it's very, very difficult. Self-esteem, kind of related to that. I'm kind of a problem solver by virtue, and so I kind of always find a solution to something. It might be a novel way around it and a long way around it, but it might be different to how neurotypicals would do it. But nevertheless, it's there. And so I do have low self-esteem when I can't remember things, but I know intelligently I should remember them. And I'm 43 very soon, and it's very. even in today's society, when we're more, people are more aware of it, you become embarrassed. You become like going back to the story when I was picking up and queuing in, or having a queue in that shop, or just outside. It was a self-esteem. I was like, whoa, hang on a minute, this isn't right. I wasn't happy about it. But that impulsivity is not under self-control. You don't want to do something, and afterwards you didn't and you shouldn't have done it. But getting raggy with somebody because they won't let you jump a couple of people ahead is, it's difficult. Self-talk, part of the same question. I do find that if I talk to myself, it helps me remember, or helps me think, and helps me plan things. If I think out loud, rather, is what I'm referring to. I think out loud. If we think, actually, you know what? We're not going to have time for autism, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite everybody, and I'll do an autism one, and we'll carry on with ADHD for now, and I'll invite everybody over the next week or two to an autism one, if everyone's happy with that. Because the self-talking, when I do talk out loud, my wife's happy with it because she knows about it. That's the other thing, relationships. People around you, as long as they understand and care, keep it simple. Give people that space and be patient with people. And sorry, where am I? There we are. Self-talk. Yeah, so self-talking does help me. Doesn't help everybody, but it is known because it's a self-calming thing. It helps me focus on a particular idea or thing. Fear of rejection, creating what looks like procrastination and putting off tasks, very sensitive to people's reactions.
I don't know if that might not resonate with you, but a few people have said things like that when you're coaching and stuff, sometimes they talk to you about to-do lists and being very practical, but sometimes it's like an emotional reason why you're not getting around to do things, or in a meeting someone might react and then overreacting to their response and feeling like you've done something really bad, that kind of thing. That might not resonate with you, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm self-employed, so that's not quite... Yeah, I understand it and get it, and I've experienced it when I've coached people and stuff in the past. But I've not properly experienced that environment.
I guess that's that. Everything's different. Things. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah.
But going back to that shop story, I think, you try and explain to people and say, look, I've got this condition. This is why. It's just, I think what it comes back down to, it's not you having that condition is a difficulty. It's the people around you, once they know or ought to know that you've got that condition, and how they need to react around you, and just say, like, okay, just give patience and understanding. That's all. Keep everything simple. Just that little bit of patience and understanding. Do people around in that meeting, for example, do the people in that meeting know that you've got a condition?
For me, it was someone else, but then I saw myself in it. So I saw someone said something, and then they turned their camera off and disappeared and went quiet. And I realised, oh, wow, they really reacted. Whereas as you could see it from the other person, that they weren't really heavily criticising, but it was like, sort of over the top. But I could tell for the person it was really personal. But I don't know, other people might not relate to that. But I think it's like an amplified reaction, being sensitive to... Yeah,
I mean, there's that... It depends on what the conversation was about and where they are in their life and stuff. But the rejection sensitive dysphoria is key. Even though it's... Because they may have had ADHD, but they may also have, which is quite common for people to have, also autism spectrum disorder. And so a sudden no, I was going to get onto it, is saying no to no. Is a little thing I do in later, well, in the next one, the autism one. It's because if you say no to somebody with autism, people with autism are very flexible, open, honest people, but we don't mind change. It's that sudden change and that sudden stop that's the difficulty. Like, for example, he's in the news at the minute. I mean, he's Harvey, isn't it? Katie Price's son. He's currently at home, but he's now moving to. His autism is more severe than mine, but nevertheless, it's there. So he's in the middle of a transition from position A to position B. So it's a gradual. They've gradually put into his mind that yes, this is going. You're an adult now. You need to do this, and they'll have days and stuff. So, but on a smaller scale, you might be changing something at work. You need to gradually introduce the idea, rather than just a sudden, right, you're doing that now, or stop doing that, change that. It's a gradual increase. And remember, the deadlines might be an issue. If people who are neurodiverse need longer deadlines, more realistic deadlines, rather, which are longer than a neurotypical, for various reasons. Yeah, that might be. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
Yeah, if you're going to send a more confidential question to me, then I'll try and answer that as best I can. There was another question popped up, and I really wanted to answer it. Where are we? Bear with me. Oh, fidget toys, yeah. It all comes back down to the close out and see people. I've tried using. I've got a. Oh, it's in the bottom of the drawer. I was going to show you my yo-yo, but everyone knows what a yo-yo looks like. I've not mastered it yet, but if I'm getting distracted, annoyed, and stressed by things like on the train platform, I'll practice my yo-yo, because that's the focus, rather than distracting things around me that become then stressful. Like, I might still smell that egg sandwich, or I might still, but it kind of just distracts me just that little bit. And it's also there as a self-comfort, thing. If you become distracted, it's not just to distract you, rather, sorry. So I've merged three sentences in one there, bear with me. It's not just there as a distraction, ADHD break. It's not just there as a distraction, it's there as a self-comfort. And many people do self-comfort things of all variant types. They might have a beer, a pizza, or a yo-yo, whatever it is, or a combination of things. Somebody asked, somebody asked me about, where are we? Can I ask you about applying for jobs which list time management and good organisational skills in their essential desired skills? I'm going to reverse that question slightly. Now, having ADHD and going for a job that involves project planning and juggling multiple projects is not ideal. It's not impossible. There are some jobs, obviously, which, for example, a no. Like, for example, if I would turn down any driving job because of that impulsivity and so on and so forth. And it's just, I just don't like driving anymore. I used to love it, but no, that's not for me. So I would turn down a driving job, because you can't just drive between 8 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning. Although maybe each day I'm awake, so why not? It's not impossible, but with appropriate adjustments, it's still worthy of applying for. It depends on, is it an absolutely essential thing to the role where, do reasonable adjustments does the Equality Act not apply to them in that particular environment? I mean, it's a superior piece of legislation, similar like the Human Rights Act, and all other legislation and environments must consider the Equality Act, especially the protected characteristics and so on, and reasonable adjustments. There's the odd exception, we've got a male-female prison. You can't send one or the other to the other, can you? And so on. And I mean, with jobs, yes, as an epileptic, obviously flying a plane. One of my jobs were I wanted to join the police service, and also now I wanted to fly to for the military. Well, neither of those, as an epileptic, is kind of suitable. You've got to draw your line somewhere.
The question mark, I think, because I sort of mentioned this when I signed up to the programme, it's predominantly for my 18-year-old son who's applying for apprenticeships, and it's a pretty standard thing. People say, they have a sort of, good team skills, good communication skills, team management, good organisational skills. And we have been really unsure as to whether or not to say on applications that he has ADHD, because basically what you're saying by saying that, even with the best will in the world, is you're admitting that actually it's a challenge. It's really challenging. And despite what everybody says about, by law, people have to make reasonable adjustments. If you've got a couple of hundred people applying for a job, I suspect it's stacked against you. And I suppose as his mum, I'm sort of really aware that I don't want to throw him up for too much rejection in terms of picking up what other people are saying in terms of self-esteem and that negativity stuff. And so it's almost, what's the best way to tackle it? I
mean, like you said, there's two angles. And yes, he's protected by law, and he should be able to apply for that and thrive in that with the right reasonable adjustment. Where he discloses that condition is his decision, your decision. But it's not advisable, but at the same time, there's a talk that I delivered for recruiters, and I talk about when they write in, I just pick on the word social skills. So look, if you've got autism, if you've got to really, if you're working in a bar, you need social skills. If you're working in an office, you just have to be amiable. Or if you're working in a warehouse, you have to be amiable. That's fine. Everybody is really. But is it what's the phrase? Is it a desirable or is it an essential? But I could argue that and flip on an application. If you flip on the application, if you write all the strengths that he's got into the job application, because he's got this ADHD, he's aware of any difficulties. So he's now on top, and he can then put himself ahead of the game and say, I'm great in a crisis. So if that gets, for time management, I'm aware of any difficulties, so I'm ahead of the game. And the strengths of people with ADHD like me are A, B, C, depending what's suitable for that role. Sorry, did that answer the question? Sorry. Yeah, magic. By all means, send me. I'm going to try and get through everybody's question that they answered on the points there. Might take me a while because there's 100 of us, but.
Mark, can I have your email address?
Yes, it's info@markcharlesworth.org. info@markcharlesworth.org.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Hopefully, Olivia, that answers your question then. How do I clear my head? Very difficult to do when you've got ADHD. It's like you say, just finding the right time for you for a particular project or task or whatever. I've just bought. My wife bought me paper puzzle book. And you know what? I mean, I wasn't getting stressed about this talk. I was a bit nervous again because I'm used to delivering face to face, and then you can actually properly see people getting bored, or they're really happy, or you can ask a question midway through, and you deliver exactly what that audience needs. So delivering this online is always a bit difficult. I was a bit nervous, and I ended up writing a script. I thought, no, actually, no, put that to one side. I've got the knowledge. Just deliver what I know. And then otherwise, I'm just reading a script, and that's not good for anybody. So I was getting a bit stressed. She bought me this puzzle book, and I bought a 3,000-piece puzzle to do, just to clear my head, because having autism, some people have an interest, and it's like a savant thing, they'll go for it. It'll be timetables, it might be space, it might be buses, chairs, whatever. But I don't really have any. I did a bit of photography and I enjoyed that, but I don't really have any hobbies or interests, which is kind of annoying. But at the same time, because I want to avoid contact with people if I can. If I go out jogging, which you can say I don't go jogging, but that means involving meeting people, and that's not me. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I was also asking because I have a 9-year-old with autism and ADHD.
Uh-huh.
And then I have ADHD. And then, not to mention COVID, but because we have a different dynamic in life right now, she's at home, right? So then she also has dietary issues. So the amount that I have to manage is so much. So when I say clear my head, everything you said helps, by the way, like what you're explaining. But when I mean clear my head, I picked up artwork. But see, then I go 100 miles an hour doing every kind of artwork I could ever find. Okay? So then I collect a whole bunch of stuff and I have a million things. So I guess what I'm looking for, see, everything I do in excess. So is there any certain task, and if anyone wants to answer in the chat, that would help too, any certain task that you or anyone else has found that is easy to not do in excess? Like, I got an exercise bike. That seems to help if I can stay on task.
Yeah, I bought one and never used it. Do you see
where I'm coming from?
Yeah, exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, it varies from person to person and household to household and so on, which isn't exactly the answer you're after. But
what I'm doing isn't working. So yeah. Whatever, I'm open for any suggestions, because the artwork, like I said, it's in excess, and I mean, it's watching TV. I used to zone out, but I can't do that with her home. I did get a Google Mini, okay, and so I can set it to do my reminders, which is very helpful. But That's about all I've got. So any suggestions you have for any task, I will write down and try.
Yeah, I mean, on my phone, I have like the reminders, and on the home screen now, I just put in rather than having lists everywhere, I've got papers everywhere, I try and condense as much as I can, and I end up rewriting lists. So I think, right, okay, if I can fit it on that list, or I can remember it, it's important. If it's not, it'll get done at some other point when it is important. So just rather than stressing so much about emptying your head or getting started on something and other things, we need to start from the position of understanding your own condition, or understanding the condition of a colleague or student or whoever. And once you understand that condition, how your brain or that person's brain works, you'll then stop fighting against it. and you'll kind of come to a happy medium. You'll meet somewhere in the middle where you can. I like to just put on, like on the TV on YouTube, there's a, you can find, you know, like these sleeping things. I mean, for those who have got kids or adults with sensory processing things, you put those on, it helps them sleep. It might be whale noise, it might be the rain on the side of a tent, or it might be a fire crackling. But I just put that on for a few hours and just chill out and do a crossword, or do a particular clue might lead me on to thinking about something else. And then obviously the mind's off. But, you know, try, accept your brain as it is. You have your own 100%. If your 100% for that occasion is 100 miles an hour, as long as it's not always at 100 miles an hour, because that's not healthy, but you have to accept your brain and stop fighting against it. I think that's, rather than trying to be normal, your normal is your normal. My normal is my normal. Don't try to be like everybody else. Accept you for who you are. And I mean that in a positive way. So it can sound negative, but so stop fighting against your own brain. I think that's the key thing. And if you need to go chill out, go. Like I'm quite lucky where I live quite remote, so I'll just go walk half a mile right down the track. I know nobody's going to walk past. Not in the winter because it's quite cold and wet and damp, but I'll just sit on the grass and look at the hills and just chill out for a bit. And there's no Wi-Fi, so I just, and actually that's another, just turn, I mean, obviously if you've got, they say son or daughter, so with autism, it might be difficult switching the Wi-Fi off, but just do something else, it's just find something else, find something different, and just, you have to explore and try different things. So hopefully that answered those questions.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, good. There's mediation and mindful apps. I don't particularly use it, but somebody's mentioned the videos for there. Somebody's mentioned an app here called mynoise.net. So I'm just looking at the...
Yeah, MyNoise. You can download it for free. You can play anything, like, it's like meditation sounds. I think you can get it on the Play Store, and it's a bit blurry.
Alright, it's MyNoise, yeah.
Yeah, you can get it, I think, on the Play Store and the App Store. And you can also type it in on the website, and you can just adjust like the sounds, and it sounds really relaxing as well. Yeah, like sleepy sounds.
Yeah. Well, I found, I mean, during COVID, nobody's about, but when I go into town, it's quite rare. I've always got the headphones on because it just helps me focus on my little. Ideally, if I've got some blinkers, like the old horses used to have. I do those, but just having the music on, when I try not to have like heavy rock music that gets my adrenaline going, just something calming as I'm walking through, just to get from A to B, you know. So that chill out music would be quite useful, yeah, for stuff like that. But try let me look see if there's any more. So hopefully I've answered everyone's questions. But again, you can email me. And Mark, one of the other I've spoken to before. He's heading out for a walk while the sun's shining. Just exercise I mean, I don't particularly exercise because I'm not very good, but just going out for a walk, and just graduating things. If you think, well, if I go out for a walk, I need to go for a proper walk, 3, 4, 5 miles hiking. And it's like, no, get away from that. I think, right, okay, I'll go walk half a mile. And then next week, you walk a mile. In 2 weeks, and before you know it, you're doing a full circuit of the area. There's some free ones, but I think it's Strava and a few others. You could walk, and somebody did this while running, and they made some shapes. I think they did some Christmas ones, and they made a deer, and then they did the sleigh, and then they added it to it. As I went out running or walking, so go out and actually draw a picture using Strava or whatever, another app. But yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do there. Is there any more questions? I think I might. No, I think everyone's. Yeah, I'll send everybody an email anyway. So I've got everyone's email address. So you've got my email address. But also I'll do the autism thing, autism session, because it's a bit of a shame that you missed out on that. I think it's because I was giving, ADHD were talkers. I underestimated my time. So you're not missing out on the autism element. I'll send an invite to that. It might be I've got to put a couple of dates on or whatnot, but so everybody can attend that wanted to. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully everyone got something extremely useful out of it. Thank you for attending and participating. I'd love your feedback and comments, good and bad. I'm not easily offended. I always want to know how I can improve. And it's that overthinking thing. It's like, I think I've done really badly, and then, no, I've done really well. So, yeah, if you have got any comments, say, look, Mark, I didn't enjoy that because, or you missed this off, or whatever, tell me. I like complaints because it's the only way I can improve. But also tell me good stuff as well. So, yes, I'll send everyone an email. So it's got my email on it. So if you want to ask me any questions, as I say, I might actually just put forward a couple of dates as a suggestion, and see what's good for everybody, and go from there. So if nobody has any questions, thank you very much for your time. Sorry I've missed off the autism and then a couple of little bits, but as long as you've understood ADHD, we've got some reasonable adjustments in there and some coping mechanisms and things like that, that's fab. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. All the best. Bye-bye.